Kia ora koutou, Reese from QuickSense here, and today we're looking at perpendicular lines. Now, the important thing about two lines which are perpendicular is that the product of their gradients is -1. So if I have the gradient, so the gradients of two perpendicular lines, M and N, right, the product of those is going to be -1. So having a look at the situation here, well, what is M equal to? M is equal to, I'm just going to move this to the left-hand side. M is equal to -1 over N. It's also equal to K times N to the power of K. So is there another way I can represent this to help answer the question? Well, -1 over N is the same thing as -1 over N. And 1 over N is the same as N to the power of -1. So what I have here, let's just do that a bit smaller, is some number that repeats twice, right? What number is that? It's -1 times N to the power of -1. Therefore, K is equal to -1. Now in this next question, we're going to take into account our point of intersection and this relationship between because they're perpendicular, the relationship between the gradients. The gradient of A multiplied by the gradient of B is equal to -1. Equally, right, we can draw an approximation of what's going on because these two lines intersect around here, around 2, 3. It's not to scale. And the A has a y-intercept of -1. So somewhere around here. Right, so if I were to draw that, roughly, then that shows me approximately where my other line is going to be. Right, it's perpendicular, that's a right angle. So I know that line B is going to have a C that is greater than 3, and it's going to have a negative gradient. Okay, so I'm going to use this to check my thinking later on. So let's go for line A to begin with. Well, line A is y equal to the gradient of A, x plus c, which we already know, so that's helpful. C is -1, so plus -1, that's just -1. Well, what about MA? What's MA equal to? Well, MA, that is the gradient of A, is equal to, over here we can see two clear points, a change in height over a change in width. So if I go across one, how far up do I go? Well, in this instance, I'm going across from up from -1 to 3. So what's the difference between 3 and -1? And what's the difference between 0 and 2? Okay, so line A is 2x minus 1. And it's positive, so that's kind of what we were expecting. Well, what about B? Well, one way that I can think about B is the y equal to mbx plus c. Now I don't know c, all I know is it's going to be more than 3, but I also know that the gradient of B is equal to -1 over the gradient of A. Well, what is that? Well, the gradient of A, that's 2. So this is going to be right there. The other thing I know about B is that the point 2, 3 lies on the line. So I'm going to substitute 2 for x and 3 for y to find C. So we get 3 equal to, right, let's resolve this. I add -1 to both sides, giving me 4. Therefore, B is y equal to -4 1 over 2x plus 4. Now I'm going to ask myself if this looks like what I had up in the corner here. C is greater than 3, that's what we expected, and it's sloping downwards. It has a negative gradient. So I'm happy with this answer.